Hey y'all, howdy. Welcome to One for the Books. I'm Sandra Broadwell. So, June was a crazy month. I quit my job. For me, I had a lot of things that I was trying to wrap up. I was training my successor at work, and I just had a lot of activities going on outside of work too. So, I only completed 5 books in June. June had a little bit of a Pride Month theme for me. I tried to read books that I knew either had LGBTQ plus main characters or the author is an LGBTQ plus author. So other than one book, which I was finishing up a series that I had started the month before, all of those books met that goal. Also, 2 of the books that I read this month met one of my overall goals for the year, which was to read books that I bought or acquired in 2022. And those books were Death's End by Cixin Liu and Southernmost by Silas House. 30 month was excellent, and I can't wait to tell you guys about the books. So let's dive in. The first book that I completed was Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I had heard so much about this book, and Circe, which I read last year, was one of my favorite books of 2022. So I was really, really excited to get to this one, and it absolutely was everything that I wanted it to be. I gave it 5 stars. Song of Achilles is basically a retelling of the Iliad in a tragic love story form. The story is told from the perspective of Patroclus, who is the lover of Achilles. They were childhood friends that grew up together, and then they go to war together. Madeline Miller, to me, just brought this story to life. It actually made me want to read the Iliad, which I've never had a desire to read before. So I think that speaks really highly to her skill. But she just really made the story breathe in a way that I never imagined. And her writing is just absolutely like dessert to me. It is delicious to read. The characters felt extremely real, despite some of them being somewhat godlike. Achilles' mother, who is a sea nymph, who's kind of like a goddess in a way. Any scene that she was in, the godlike power that she brought to the page and the fear that you felt because her like unknowable power was present and just crackled off the page. And I really felt like the dread that Patroclus feels when he sees Achilles' mother. Like I said, it's a tragedy. It's a love story. It was so beautifully written, and I definitely teared up at the end. So if any of that sounds interesting, definitely give Song of Achilles a try. I will most definitely be auto-buying any new book that Madeline Miller comes out with in the future. The second book that I read was The Traitor, Cormorant by Seth Dickinson. This is the first book in the Masquerade trilogy, which my husband bought me for my birthday this year. And I was super excited to read this. This is the story of Baru, who is a young girl when her homeland is invaded by basically the evil empire. And the empire takes over her homeland and destroys her culture and murders her father, and basically puts her in like a re-education school for young people in the empire. And she throws herself into the school and dedicates her life to basically being the best imperial citizen that she can be so that she can gain enough power to break down the empire from the inside. But in order to do that, she has to basically betray everything that she knows and loves in order to seem like she is the best imperial citizen. So she's a deeply flawed character. She obviously makes some really horrendous choices. And even though I knew what those choices would be, I still dreaded them. And I was still just like, oh gosh, no, don't do it. It was beautifully complex. It had a lot of political intrigue. So if you love political intrigue, I would definitely recommend the series. I would say the characters at some points and their relationships were a little bit flatter than I would have liked, but I still was very immersed in the story and excited to see where the rest of the series goes. So that was The Traitor, Cormorant. The third book that I completed this month was Death's End by Cixin Liu. This is the third and final book of the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy, which started with the 3-body problem. So I read the first 2 books in the series last month, and so I was excited to finally wrap this up. And oh my gosh, as you can see, I ate this book up. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was by far the superior book in the trilogy. Really, really stoked on how the series ended. I could not have imagined going into this how this series would play out and where the author would take it. The first two books, if you're unaware, are about an alien invasion that is impending on planet Earth. And planet Earth has about 400 years to prepare for these aliens arriving because they have slower than light speed travel. A bunch of stuff spirals out from that. This book kind of takes everything in a different direction, and it is just about humanity and this alien species and how they survive or don't through the span of time, basically all the way to the heat end of the universe. And it just tackles so many philosophical questions and really just like blew my mind at multiple points in time during this book. I was really loving it. I was loving the way the author explored these concepts. It really looks at the consequences of the actions of individuals and how that can affect not just their own lives, but the lives of their entire species over centuries, over millennia. And when you look at time at that scale, what really matters in the end, and about the choices that we make. So really, really excellent. So glad that I read this series and definitely would highly recommend it to lovers of sci-fi. The fourth book that I read was Southernmost by Silas House. This is a contemporary novel about a preacher in Tennessee, lives in a very small town, and the book starts off with a flood that devastates his community. And there is a gay couple that he offers to stay in his home because their house got washed away. And this creates a lot of tension between him and his wife, who is very bigoted. And he then, because of that, preaches a sermon at his church about tolerance. And his church basically throws him out for that. They don't want to hear that message. And so even though this kind of feels like it could be an old-timey book, it was a very modern setting. It was talking about Kim Davis, who was just in the news a few years ago for refusing to sign marriage certificates for gay couples. So I was not expecting where this book went. It says on the inside flap, but I basically just picked this book up because I read Lark Ascending by Silas House last year, which is right here, and I absolutely loved it. That book was more dystopian. This one was just contemporary. So this is a little bit less my style, so I didn't love it quite as much, but it's really just a story about the love of a father for his son and how things can go really wrong within a family or within a community, and the reckoning that occurs for him between faith and bigotry and the intersection of those two things. It's about also facing up to the consequences of your actions. So I really, really enjoyed this. I absolutely adore the way Silas House writes. What he chooses to focus on to set the scene and tell the story, and the way he characterizes people is just absolutely magnificent. And I actually, despite having a physical copy of this book, which I received for Christmas last year, I actually listened to this on audiobook because it was going for like a 4-hour car ride, and I was like, I need something to listen to. And I had wanted to read this month. So the audiobook was really great. Yeah, I have one more book by Silas House that I need to read this year that I was hoping to get to this month, but I didn't. But he's quickly becoming a favorite author, and just because his writing is so beautiful. And after I finished this book, I was like, I just need to give this book to everyone that I know. It's so important, and I feel like it will really resonate with anyone that has grown up in the South. The final book that I finished this month is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone. First of all, thank you to my neighbor Rainey for letting me borrow this book. This is a beautiful little story that, as you can see, it's very short. It is about two soldiers on the opposite side of a time war, and they are both trying to manipulate the time streams in order to benefit their society, their culture, their way of life. The reds are kind of a cybernetic species, and the blues are a biological species. The two main characters are not named. They are just called Red and Blue, but they are soldiers in this war. They're very good at what they do, manipulating the time streams, and it's very, very kind of messed up work. You know, they have to kill a lot of people to make things happen a certain way. They kind of leave like signature moves. Each one can tell that the other has been there, and so they start to recognize each other's signatures on the time streams and like leaving letters to each other to kind of gloat about their success and be like, haha, I've already been here and there's nothing you can do, like it's already set in motion type of thing. And through these letters, they get to learn more about each other and about what it's like on the other side. And they start to develop feelings for each other and eventually fall in love. And it's really a risky business that they're involved in. They aren't allowed to be communicating with the other side of the war. And so it kind of calls into question everything that they know when they get to learn more about each other. Eventually, they have to decide what's worth more to them, their love for each other or their success for the war. It's very sharp, it's succinct, it's delightful. I was swooning a couple of times. It's just everything that you could want out of a time travel sci-fi sapphic romance. Absolutely delightful. Highly recommend. So those were the 5 books I completed, but I did do some additional reading. I was also doing some research for the novel that I am writing, as well as I started the second book in the Masquerade series, which is called The Monster by Cormorant. I got about halfway through this, so I'll be finishing that this month in July. And also, my friends and I decided to start buddy reading Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. We're going through it pretty slowly and getting together basically every 2 weeks to discuss where we are with the book. So far we have read 152 pages. And so that's about that point in the book. It's almost 1,000 pages long. So it might take us the rest of the year to get through this, but I am loving this book so far. It's hilarious. It's very like Monty Python, Three Stooges-esque, and it's cracking me up because this book is like 400 years old. How sharp and witty it still is, and how well it's so accessible to read. It's not like a really dry sort of classic. It's absolutely not what I expected at all, and I'm loving it. So I'm sure I'll be talking more about this in the months to come. So those are the 5 books I completed and some other books that I'm working on at the moment. I am super excited for my July TBR. I have a ton of things that I want to get to this month. This is my last month living in Lexington. My husband and I are going to hit the road. Basically, July 31st is the last day of our lease. We're moving into our van full time, and so I have a lot to do this month. We're finishing remodeling our van that we're going to be living in, and we also have to pack up our entire apartment and also just like spend as much time as we can with our friends and our community here. So I'm not sure how much time I'll have to be reading, but I'm also not working, so I should have more time. But there's just a lot to do. So I have a really ambitious TBR. I'm not sure how much reading I'll get to do, but I'm excited to share with you guys as the month goes on, and excited to be doing more YouTube as time goes on as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you've read any of these books, please be sure to let me know what you thought of them in the comments below. Also, let me know what your favorite read for the month of June was. And as always, be kind, read books, and hit the subscribe button below for more bookish content to come. I'll see you next time.